Here we go. All right. So I think maybe I should pull these down. Are streams or rivers? I say streams and lakes. Okay. Sometimes I get going real fast in my head. I'm going to try and start going very fast the next couple months because I don't want us to have to go light speed in April. So I know you may not like it, and you may be like, I'm not learning anything, but I'd rather have more time to review and kind of catch our breath before the test. So I'm going to try and start going fast. So that's my plan. Stay with me. All right. And I never ever really get a whole lot of AP Chem students coming like after school. Then they come during free periods. Feel free to come after school or your free periods or lunch. You ever, you don't get anything I go over or you're confused, just don't let it snowball. I mean, you guys are good students. You've taken AP or you're in a bunch. You get it, but so do the right thing, right? If you get behind or you're confused, come see me. Don't let it build up. All right, streams or rivers. Here we go. All right, where am I here? Okay, so streams or rivers, flowing fresh water that may originate from underground springs or is runoff from rain or melting snow. Rain and melting snow is a big part of that. There are underground springs. Underground water tend to be used as, they're called aquifers, used for drinking water because after the rainwater or perhaps melting snow has percolated and flowed through the ground, literally the ground and rocks and sediment it goes through cleanses it or cleans it. There's also plants that do the same. So anyways, that's what creates streams and rivers. Streams are typically narrow, a slower flow rate, small amounts of water. Rivers are bigger, more water. A lot of this is kind of like, okay, I'm 16, 17 years old. I've lived on this planet for this long. I know what these are, right? So it's not like you have to write it word for word. Let's see here. Where do you think more organic matter is found or more plants would grow? In a fast-moving stream or river or slow-moving? Slow, right. So if you need to write it, write it. If not, it makes sense, then you don't have to, I suppose. But yeah, slow-moving just is easier because why? Why does that make, everyone said slow. Why? Why does that make sense?
Less erosion.
Less erosion? If it's very fast moving, plants wouldn't be able to really what?
Get their seeds in the ground.
Yeah, it's to kind of take hold, right? Let's see here. What else do I have? Organic matter comes from terrestrial biomes, like what might fall in a stream or river?
Trees.
Seeds, yeah, leaves. Leaves, parts of trees. Larvae, crustaceans eat the organic matter, and then fish eat those smaller organisms, right? So that's kind of like the process. You get your organic matter from the land, and then these small organisms, maybe near the edge, eat them, and then the fish eat those small organisms. Let's see here. Slow-moving streams and rivers, organic material can settle, so plants and algae can grow. What about rapids and fast-moving rivers and streams? What do you think there's a lot of in that water? There's lots of movement and aeration. Oxygen, right. So streams and rivers that move very quickly tend to have a lot of oxygen because it's mixing with atmospheric oxygen. Can you guys think of one type of fish? There's two types that I always think of. Rapids, kind of big fish, someone said it. Trout and salmon, right. So you want to write that down. Trout and salmon are examples. If you have a fast-moving stream or river, let's say, and there's lots of oxygen, these fish need that dissolved in the water, so they would be good indicators that everything's pretty healthy there. Slow moving, even though there's more plant life, there might not be as much fish life, or at least big fish, unless it's tolerant to low oxygen, right? So the gist of what I'm trying to say is that the fast moving, there's more dissolved oxygen. So the fish that need a lot of oxygen in the water will survive there. The slow moving rivers and streams, it's fish that don't need as much oxygen, right? Not as tolerant, or more tolerant to less oxygen, less DO, it's called, dissolved oxygen. And the one example I found is catfish. Catfish kind of live in the mud. They don't need as much oxygen as, let's say, salmon or trout. So yeah, we all know what streams or rivers are, but some of that's kind of maybe newish, or just at least for this class and the testable material. Fast moving, lots of oxygen. Slow moving, not as much. But the slow moving, you can have more plant life because they can take hold. And then again, based on the type of fish, it can live in the fast moving or slow moving. I really don't think the test is going to say, give us an example of a fish that would live in a fast moving stream. I really don't think so, right? And I'm not wording it very academically there, but I think just in general, having a concept of the two different types, fast moving, slow moving, and what that can mean. All right, so that's streams and rivers. Moving on. So again, I'm going quick here. All right, freshwater wetlands. Here we go. Wetlands are extremely important. Aquatic biomes, submerged or saturated by water at least part of the year, but shallow enough to support emergent vegetation like cattails, as an example. So it roots underwater, but emerges out of the water. There's a lot. I went down, like I said, with Mr. McConnelly on Thursday after school, and there's a lot of wetland down there. There's beavers down there. There's some evidence. There were some trees that were gnawed on. Pretty cool, actually. There's a lot going on down there that we're talking about right now. Freshwater are among the most productive biomes on Earth. Why might that be? The obvious is there's a lot of water, which plants can grow in water. They're not so deep that there's like a pond or lake. When you keep getting, if it's deep enough, light can't get there, and not a lot of things can grow. But here, because it's shallow, it all works. Let me see here. Okay. So make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. I think, is that all I had? Yeah, see so these PowerPoints are kind of limited here. I got stuff you need to write down here. All right, so when we say freshwater wetlands, I gave you two of them earlier, swamps and marshes. What's another one? What's with a B?
Bogs.
Bogs, right. So you got swamps, and I'll try and keep this brief. You got swamps, marshes, and bogs. And you're like, well, what's the difference? So swamps have trees. Marshes do not. Marshes have like cattails, for example. So by definition, like you look in the book or online or whatever, so swamps have trees, can have trees. Marshes do not. They have plant life, maybe something like cattails, sedges, which is like a grass-like plant that flowers. That's called sedge. Sedges, trees. Again, the sedges are just kind of like tall grass, but they can also flower. I'll be honest, that was new to me too. It's new to you. So swamp. I'm sorry, I wrote that in the wrong spot. Sorry, guys. I was talking about one thing and wrote down the other. Swamp is trees. This is where the sedges are. I'm sorry. Sedges and cattails. Sorry. So marshes don't have trees. Just to be clear, marshes have the other types of plants. And then bogs are acidic. Actually, they have acidic medium. So the water is slightly more acidic, and that's due to what lives in it. Bogs can have spruce trees, so that's specific to bogs. I'll be honest, that was new to me as well. So yes, swamps have trees, but these are spruce trees. And they also have peat moss. Have you heard of that? Yes? No? Maybe? Peat moss? You can buy it. It's how you put it in your pots to grow your plants. Raise your hand if you've heard of peat moss. Okay. There's another name for it. I don't know how to say it, so I'll just write it down. Spagnum. Sphagnum? Sphagnum? I don't know if the S is silent or what. That's peat. I know the normal name called peat moss, like for the layman's, like me, layman's terms. So that's the same thing. I have some images here to help you visualize this here a little bit. Okay. So here we go. Here's a picture of a swamp. There's a swamp. Picture of a marsh. So again, there's no trees in this picture. Trees. No trees. Here's another marsh. Again, no trees. I know it's small, but I'm trying to really focus on that. And then a bog. I got two pictures of bogs here. So bogs look a little bit more desolate, like there's something wrong, and that's because of the acidic nature. There's another one. Peat bog, another term. So those are basically, looks like dead spruce trees. So bogs just kind of look like, I don't want to go in that, right? Marshes and swamps look a little more pleasant. So that's kind of how I was remembering it, all right? Okay, so that's the three types of freshwater. One more thing I want to add here is why are wetlands so important? Why are wetlands important? They're very important. Anyone think of a reason why?
They have a lot of life.
Lot of life. Yeah, I'll take it. A lot of life, a lot of biodiversity. Good, that's a good one. It's not what I have written. There's like these three like major things, but that's important too. I'll give you a hint. Without these, without wetlands, droughts and floods can become a problem. So how can opposite ends of the spectrum, how can this regulate both? Good. So wetlands absorb a lot of water. So what's that good for? Well, how does that prevent drought?
Because the water's not going anywhere else.
So if you have a wetland that absorbs a lot of water, and then around the wetland there's a drought, how do you think the wetland comes in handy?
Water just goes.
Yeah, the water goes to where it needs to go. Think of the concentration difference there, kind of like osmosis. So it can kind of help drought conditions because all that water can kind of drain where it needs to. And then what about flooding? If it rains a lot, for example, for a long period of time, wetlands do what?
Soak it up.
Soaks it up, exactly. So it absorbs a lot of water, that kind of covers both. All right, good. Clean groundwater can come from wetlands. So what does that mean? What does it do to the water? Filters it. Filters water. Why? What do you think? What in these wetlands filters the water?
Algae.
Lots of plant life, right? And that's back to what Quinn said. And then the last one you may not get. A lot of birds use wetlands when they migrate. Migratory birds have a habitat. This was new to me as well. What did I write? A third of endangered bird species spend some time in wetlands. So, kind of a big deal. Birds like to migrate. And where do they go? Wetlands. This is actually something we're going to get in the next chapter. It's called ecological services. So nature, the earth provides us with services, and the animals that live here, not just humans. Maybe we don't think about it. Groundwater is filtered so we can drink it. Birds have somewhere to live. If there's a drought in the area or a potential flood, this will help us out. So natural environment, ecosystems, habitats, all these different phrases help us out. It's called ecological service. We'll get to that down the road. Okay, moving on. So that's freshwater. Now we're going to do marine biomes. Okay, so we got 5 types. Salt marsh, mangrove swamp, intertidal zone, and then we already went over coral reef and open ocean. So, first one on my list here in my notes is salt marsh. A marsh, you can just, I'm going to skip that so you can just write it down as we go. Salt marsh, a marsh containing non-woody emergent vegetation. That's just basically like flowering plants that don't have thick stems, right? We talked about that. Bamboo is woody, a tree is woody, obviously. Found along the coast in temperate climates. It's one of the most productive biomes in the world. It leaves out a really important part. Estuaries are found here. Estuaries are where freshwater and saltwater mix, and it has to be on the coast. So, I mean, like, hopefully an easy question would be, where are estuaries found? Obviously not inland, they can't be. You have to get to the ocean, saltwater. Found on the coast, where fresh water mixes with salt water, so you have fresh and salt water mixing. And a lot of time in estuaries, fish will spawn here. So spawning fish are found in estuaries or in salt marshes. Lots of organic material here. Very productive with plants. Let's see, we have shellfish here as well. And what I have written down is spawning fish and shellfish spend 2/3 of their larval stages in estuaries. So, along with the freshwater wetlands and some of these marine wetlands here, humans have drained them for agriculture, or blocked them off, so that's a big problem. Pollution is another big problem, water pollution, so that's affecting the estuaries. Again, the thing that kills me, and the more I learn about this class and stuff like this, is these productive environments that we are turning into agriculture, using for agriculture, the drinking water is going down the crap. Because all of this productivity filters out drinking water, but we're not allowing that to happen. So it's becoming a problem. Drinking water is a big, big problem. And it will be. Not for us, because we live here, but in lots of other countries, it's an issue. Mangrove swamp. You ever see mangroves? These things are cool.
Is that
They're all over Florida.
Is that what the Everglades is?
Yeah, so on the coast. So mangroves are trees that are salt tolerant, and they help protect the coastline. And of course, because we are building constantly on the coast, because everybody wants oceanfront hotels or resorts or housing, these mangroves are getting wiped out, which helps erosion and storm damage, and there's going to be more, so it's like a double negative, double whammy essentially. So we're wiping out all these coastline ecosystems because we want to live there, want to party there, whatever you want to call it, okay? Vacation there. But because of climate change, there seems to be more storms and more intense. They would help with the storms, so it's kind of like a negative cycle there. Swamp that occurs along tropical, subtropical coasts, contains salt-tolerant trees with roots submerged in the water. If you have seen them, you definitely, when I show you the picture, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I remember seeing them. If not, then I'll show you the picture. But yeah, I've seen them in Florida. I'm not sure if they were in Hawaii. you would think they are, but I just don't remember seeing them. I remember seeing them very clearly before. So when we're done with the notes here, I'll put up the images of these, the salt marsh, mangrove, and then the intertidal zone, which is next. Let's see, what do I have here? A third of the world's mangrove swamps have been destroyed by humans, not just for building, but also apparently rice can be grown in these areas and rubber trees. Intertidal zone, narrow band of coastline between levels of high tide and low tide. Waves that crash onto the shore in this biome can make it a challenge for organisms to hold on and not get washed away. So obviously the organisms that live in this area must be tolerant to two different conditions. And what are those two conditions? Underwater and then not underwater. So they have to figure that out, right? So it's kind of unique. The organisms that live there are unique, is what I'm getting at. It tends to be a stable habitat at high tide, but harsh and unstable at low tide. Can you guys list three things that, list two things at low tide that would be a problem for something like a sea star? So high tide, life is good, water's above it. Low tide, it's still in the same spot. Dries out, desiccation it's called, desiccation or drying out. And what else would be pretty harmful that it doesn't really want to deal with?
People.
Okay, predators or people, those are good things, yes. One more, probably more significant. It's there when the water is covering them, and it's still there when the water is not. And it will bake them. Sunlight, think about it. Something that lives in the water, the water filters some of that sunlight, and it's not as harmful. But if it's just wide open against a rock and is blasted with sun, it can dry out, it can affect, essentially it can die. High temp, I wrote direct sunlight, high temp, and drying out, desiccation. So so desiccation, that's a great example of, we should make sure we know, I think there's 2 C's in it. Yeah. Desiccation, that's an example of like a vocab word in this class that I don't necessarily think on a test they'll say drying out. They'll say desiccation. And yeah, that kind of makes it hard, but it is what it is. So desiccation means drying out. I actually have desiccators in the back that I never use. It's for chemistry. Barnacles, sponges, algae, mussels, crabs, sea stars, all of those organisms. So if you remember a couple of them, barnacle, sponge, algae, crabs, sea star, mussels, they all live in this intertidal zone. They can all kind of hold on so they don't get washed away. What do you think a big issue with this as far as human impact negatively? Pollution's the number one. What else? Think more like the ocean, like like Gulf of Mexico. Oil spills. I have pollution, trash, kind of the same thing. Chemical pollution, oil spills. Yeah, so the coast is, so the open ocean may not deal with the same thing the coast deals with, right? That's one thing to try and understand. The open ocean is more of the like ocean acidification, like kind of broad affecting things or items, whereas here it could be specific things. Like if you're in the middle of the ocean, except for the garbage patches, you're probably not dealing with literally trash too much. But on the coast for sure. All right, let's get images of these things here, and then we'll see which time we've got here. All right, what's next? Salt marsh. Hey, Galen. Hey, that's estuary. I don't want estuary. Oh, we'll come back. It's loading. Another salt marsh. Let's try this one. Nope. It's a really small picture there. I can try and zoom in a little bit. I know why. I picked this one because it kind of gives you a good example. So inland, salt marsh is where it starts mixing with the ocean water, and then the mangroves are along the coast. I'll show you that in a second. So essentially, the salt marsh is like a freshwater marsh, except it's not inland, it's on the coast. Mangrove. I think this was a good one here. Yeah. Anyone see these before? Yeah, so those are mangroves. Lots of organisms also use them to live in and on and around too, not just protecting from erosion. Storms. How would this protect the land from erosion? So the land behind it, let's say maybe?
It's like a barrier.
Yeah, it's a barrier, literally. So the water's going to hit the trees and not get to the soil. Intertidal zone. I thought this was I think this was Wikipedia, yeah. So you can even see where the rocks are wet, right? So obviously high tide, the water would be higher. Low tide, I mean, I think most of us are familiar with the high tide, low tide, but you may not always be around that or see it, very often, but there you go. So yeah, some of those organisms who cling to these rocks, when the water is high tide, all is good. When it's low tide, not so much.
Is the beach considered an intertidal zone?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, beach, great example, yeah. And then, isn't there, you guys might know, some sort of road or island or something, somewhere in Europe. At high tide, people can cross it, and low tide, you cannot? Or the opposite?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's one specific location in Europe, it's like a tourist thing, and people have gotten stuck. Because
really? I think I once got stuck.
maybe Spain? I forget where it is, but I mean there's places like that all over, but
Yeah, there's a place to Cape Cod like that.
yeah, so I mean you guys get the idea. But alright. Alright, I think we're good there. We did all this. Alright, good. Now, I only got 3 minutes left, huh? Alright, so I'm gonna give you more homework. Yeah, I'll tell you what, to save time, I want to talk a little bit. I'll write it up here and then I'll send a picture later. You can come in and get it later if you don't get the remind. Alright, real quick here, where we're headed. So that was good. We got through everything today. Alright, tomorrow, here's the plan. Tomorrow, we're going to zip through photosynthesis, productivity, and trophic levels. When I say trophic levels, what does that mean to you guys? Trophic levels. How about food webs? What's a food web?
What organisms eat up?
One organ, right. What's the lowest level?
Grass.
Producers. Then what? Who eats producers? Herbivores. Who eats herbivores? Alright, so primary consumers, he's saying. And who eats the herbivores? Who eats them? Us. Okay. Are there any other animals that are kind of in our category?
Lions.
And bears. Oh my. Right. Alright, good. So you have an idea. So we'll start talking about that tomorrow. And I guess that's about it. Bell's going to ring real soon here. So Caitlin, come on up.